Hey there, fellow travelers. If you're planning a trip to the United States, you're in for an amazing adventure. But before you pack your bags and head out, let me share some crucial don'ts to help you avoid any awkward moments or unexpected surprises. Trust me, knowing what not to do can be just as important as knowing what to do. So, buckle up and let's dive into some essential tips that'll make your US trip smooth and stress-free. Alright, let's kick things off with something that might not be immediately obvious: personal space. Now, this one is a biggie and it's easy to overlook if you're not used to it. Americans really value their personal bubble. Think of it as this invisible force field that surrounds everyone. If you get too close, especially with strangers, they might feel uncomfortable or even a little bit invaded. I know. In some countries like Italy or Spain, it's totally normal to greet people with a hug or a kiss on the cheek. But in the US, that's often reserved for close friends and family. So, when in doubt, give a little space. Another thing that can catch travelers off guard is the public transportation situation. If you're used to places like Europe, where trains and buses are super reliable and get you pretty much anywhere, the US is, well, a bit different. Major cities like New York or Chicago do have decent public transit, but outside of those hubs, it's a whole other story. Smaller cities and rural areas might not have the best bus or train options, and relying on them can be frustrating, time-consuming, or even unsafe at night. So, unless you're staying strictly in a big city, renting a car is usually your best bet. And speaking of size, don't underestimate how massive the US is. It's huge! A lot of people don't realize just how vast the country is. You could drive for hours and still be in the same state. For example, if you're planning to drive from New York to Miami, it's not just a short trip down the road. You're looking at over 1,000 miles of driving, which can take a lot longer than expected. So, if your goal is to see multiple cities or regions, be prepared for some serious travel time. It's often better to focus on one area like the West Coast, New England, or the Southeast so you can really enjoy your time and not spend half your trip in the car. Next up, don't be fooled by the sticker price. In the US, the price you see on the tag is not the price you're going to pay at the register. Sales tax isn't included, and it varies by state, so you might find that your purchase costs a little more than you anticipated. For example, in some states, the tax might be around 6%, while in others, it could be closer to 10%. And don't forget about tipping. This is a huge one. In the US, tipping is a big part of the dining experience, especially at sit-down restaurants. It's standard to leave 15 to 20% of your bill as a tip for your server, and in many cases, their wages depend on those tips. So, factor that into your budget when you're eating out. Alright, so how do you navigate all these potential hiccups? Let's break it down. When it comes to personal space, the solution is simple: follow the lead of the locals. Pay attention to how people interact, and if you're not sure how close is to close, err on the side of caution and give a little more space than you think you need. It's better to be safe than sorry. When meeting new people, a friendly handshake or a simple wave will do the trick. For transportation, my best advice is to plan ahead. If you're sticking to big cities like New York, Washington, D.C., or San Francisco, public transport will likely work fine for you. But if your itinerary includes smaller towns or national parks, renting a car will give you the flexibility you need to explore at your own pace. It also gives you the freedom to stop at interesting roadside attractions along the way, which is a quintessential American experience. And to tackle the size of the US, do some research before your trip. Decide on a region that interests you the most and focus your time there. This way, you'll get a deeper experience without wearing yourself out from hours of travel. For example, if you're into nature, the Pacific Northwest offers incredible national parks, beautiful coastlines, and vibrant cities like Seattle and Portland, all within a reasonable driving distance from one another. When it comes to sales tax and tipping, just be prepared. Mentally add a few extra dollars to whatever price you see, and always carry a little extra cash or be ready to adjust your card payments for tips. If you're dining in, remember that servers rely heavily on tips, and it's not considered optional. It's just part of the dining culture here. Let's put this into perspective. Last year, I was traveling through the US and decided to road trip from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. It seemed like a simple trip at first, just a couple of hours on the road, right? Wrong. I didn't account for traffic and all the stops I'd want to make along the way. What I thought would be a quick drive turned into an all-day affair. But because I had rented a car and planned ahead, I was able to explore places I would have missed if I had taken a bus or flown straight to Vegas. Those little detours made the trip unforgettable. And when I went to a restaurant in Texas, I saw the price on my burger and thought, wow, what a deal. But then came the sales tax and the tip, and suddenly my cheap burger wasn't so cheap after all. I was prepared, though, and it's just something you get used to when traveling in the US. So there you have it, some essential don'ts to keep in mind before you visit the US. If you respect personal space, plan your transportation wisely, and keep an eye on those hidden costs, you'll have an amazing time. And remember, travel is all about adapting to the local culture, so embrace these quirks and enjoy the experience. If you found these tips helpful, go ahead and smash that like button and hit subscribe for more travel advice. Got any US travel stories or don'ts of your own? Drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching and safe travels.